Hello and welcome to the Wedding Guide podcast. I'm your host, Pete the Celebrant, and today I proudly announce the very first sponsor of the show, Easy Weddings. Easy Weddings helps thousands of couples nail their big day every year. With their award-winning directory and mobile apps, you can find and book top-rated wedding suppliers, stay on track with their planning tools, or for a more hands-off approach, work with a wedding planner to save you time and money. And the best thing of all, it's all free. Jump onto easyweddings.com.au to start your stress-free journey up the aisle today. Along with this exciting announcement is our guest for the episode, Darcy Burch, a wedding planner from Easy Weddings. She's currently planning her own wedding and provides us with great advice for planning your very own big day, especially during COVID. Allow me to introduce you to the very wedding knowledgeable Darcy Burch. We are live. Darcy Burch, thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing today?
Yeah, great, thanks. Monday morning, the sun's shining, so thanks for having me, Pete.
Great. And what did you do on your weekend?
As you know, the usual, made the weekly grocery shop into a 2 or 3 hour exercise, going up and down each aisle and really taking it in.
Nice.
Apart from that, my partner put a Weber on, so we had some delicious chicken and watched the football. So gearing up for finals. We'll see, it's very interesting next couple of weeks. So that's really the only thing getting us through at the moment. And
now for some couples, the most important question is, who do you barrack for?
I'm a St Kilda fan.
Obviously
die hard there, and years of disappointment, and we'll see how this year pans out as well. But I'm actually engaged to a Collingwood supporter, so makes it a very interesting household.
There you go. And with your engagement, we are going to get into that because your personal experience is going to help a lot of current couples who are in the exact same place of planning their wedding. COVID is hit. So we are going to get into that. But Darcy, you are from Easy Weddings. Can you tell us what is Easy Weddings and how does it help couples?
Sure. So Easy Weddings, hopefully most of you have visited before, but basically we're the biggest online directory for the wedding industry in Australia. So we do account for about 85% of the market, which is a fantastic figure.
Huge.
Yes, so Easy Weddings is actually celebrating its 20th year of operation. So it's our 20th anniversary. So here's hoping we can have a big party soon enough. So it's actually a family owned and operated business, which I actually didn't know about until I started here as well, which is really nice and exciting. So we do, whilst it's a big team of around 50 of us, we do all have quite a significant input into the business as well, which I find very exciting. So for us, in 2019, we had 3.9 million people visit the site. So that's some big numbers here in Australia specifically as well. And about 2 or 3 years ago now, we did launch Easy Weddings in the UK. So it's slightly a little bit of a different model with a bit more of a venue focus, which is something that I'll go into shortly here as well. But it does exist in the UK and does very well over there as well. So it's nice to have almost a global brand representation as well. We do have our app. So it's a great kind of guide for couples to help them plan on their wedding journey. So it's a smaller version of the site essentially, but it's got some great tools in there, budgets, mood boards, styling tips, that type of thing as well. And obviously our social media accounts. So we're pretty much on every corner of the wedding industry world, I guess you could say. Yeah.
Fantastic. So over 50 employees at Easy Weddings. What's your role there?
Sure. So I'm our venue and planning manager. So I manage our wedding planning team, which is slightly different to, I guess, the usual bread and butter, which we're kind of known for. So we have our directory, which, as I mentioned, is the largest in Australia. But we now also have 2 services that are quite unique to the market that we offer directly to our consumers, so our brides and grooms. So I manage both of these departments. So one being our venue account managers. Mm-hmm. So we have Melbourne wedding specialists and Sydney wedding specialists at this stage, which we do hope to branch into Brisbane and other CBD states as well around Australia when we can. But for the moment, both of the girls basically work on behalf of a range of premier wedding venues across their states. and we help brides with their initial inquiry, chatting through all the different packages and pricing across the board, and finding out budgets, styling tips, that type of thing, and directing them to the most suitable venues for them. So we call it a venue finding service. So brides and grooms can come to us and say, hey, we've got $50,000, we've got 200 people, we have absolutely no idea where to start. Can you help us out? So that's kind of an end-to-end service in terms of the venue component, which we find is, I guess, the biggest ticket item for your wedding planning journey. Second to that, we do have an exciting supplier packages model, which is unique to the market. So we're actually the only company that is offering a supplier package at the moment. So basically, we get to know you and your partner, the types of people that you are, personality traits, preferences, if you're a posy bride or a candid bride, and we pair you with your 4 essential suppliers. So your photographer, videographer, celebrant, and DJ or band. So we kind of help you through that process, which, as you can imagine, saves you hours of time and endless amount of research to kind of find the cream of the crop in your budget to fit your needs, to suit your region, and go from there.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
Now, even before Easy Weddings, you were involved in weddings. What were you doing before you joined Easy Weddings?
Sure. So my background is very venue specific. So I've worked across a number of different companies, including the National Trust, where I was looking after weddings at Ripponlea Estate and Como House. So gorgeous kind of historic mansion properties. So lots of garden weddings. From there, I also worked for Showtime Event Centre. So they have a gorgeous kind of industrial chic venue down on the wharf and cargo hall as well. And then from there, the last 3.5 years, I was actually based at Park Hyatt, Melbourne. So one of the 5-star premier hotels here in the city. So I was managing weddings across 2 of their large event spaces.
That's great. And I love that, as you mentioned, I'm like, yes, been there. So, and now they're great venues. So it's fantastic to have that experience behind you with that.
Definitely. Look, they're all very different. So certainly learnt a lot at each.
Yeah. Now, with Easy Weddings, one of the biggest reasons I wanted you guys on is because you've got such a huge, just aerial view of weddings all across Australia. Is with that comes different ideas. It comes this is perspective, particularly to help us during COVID, of what people are doing and the stats of how people are being impacted.
Mm-hmm.
Can you share with us, and this is on a personal view as well, because, and you please tell us about, you said you're engaged, you're planning to get married, and you've had to change things. Tell us, how will COVID change the landscape of weddings in the next 2 years for us?
Yeah, sure. So I'll start with some kind of market forecast that we've been fortunate enough to I guess, take into account. So from what we're seeing, obviously, as everyone knows, majority of the weddings for 2020 have now been postponed, most of which have gone into 2021. So we're expecting 145,000 weddings to take place in 2021, which is an increase of 20% from the previous year. So we're obviously going off 2019 data, being that 2020 it's a league of its own.
Sure.
So as you can imagine, that has a massive impact on, I guess, availability, which I will certainly tap into a little bit later in our conversation. But there is that real need for brides and grooms to start thinking about their 2021 and 2022 weddings now, because, essentially the prime dates for the next 12 to 18 months are certainly almost gone, if that makes sense. So the next expectation from there is 150,000 weddings for 2022, because there are still a lot of brides and grooms that are wanting to wait that little bit longer just to make sure that they can have their day exactly as they planned. Maybe they might have international guests or quite large guest numbers. So they are playing it safe and moving to 2022. So we're expecting another 5,000 weddings in 2022, so a total of 150,000. So for me personally, we are due to get married on the 10th of April next year. So that was our original date. We haven't actually planned yet. So that was exciting. We chose to wait quite a while, just, house plans and everything like that.
Yeah.
So for us, we haven't had too much change just yet. Obviously, I need to kind of approach planning with a little bit more caution than maybe previously required. However, at the end of the day, I understand kind of the importance of supporting the industry through this time. So I'm kind of still full steam ahead. My goal is to kind of reassess in January, because I do believe that, you know, in terms of going ahead with a wedding or even postponing, that's certainly something that can be done in a 3-month turnaround. So I don't kind of feel the need to stress ourselves out just yet. The only thing that I have done, which might be helpful to other couples, we only have quite a small guest list of about 120 people, but I have made a bit of a backup guest list of about 100, because I do feel that kind of the next step from the 50 packs restriction may be 100. So just kind of, you know, coming up with a couple of different options. Obviously, those 20 people don't actually know yet, so hopefully they're not listening today. But yeah, that's kind of where we're at the moment. But dress and all of that's still on the way. So we've still got plenty of time, in the process of ordering bridesmaids dresses now as well. So they are coming from a designer in New York. So I'm just kind of cautious there in terms of delays with freight.
Sure.
So if something that couples are considering, if something's coming from somewhere internationally, it's certainly something to do. I guess, let's say the normal window was 3 to 4 months lead time, I would, you know, push that out to 5-6 months just to be safe.
Okay. What can you share with us? Because Easy Weddings, you guys know the stats. You hear from all the couples. You're currently in the midst of doing the report for 2020, and I know thousands of couples have already jumped on board with telling Easy Weddings, you know, where they're at in their planning and how they've been impacted. Can you share with us some of those stats just to help with the planning?
Yeah, sure. So at the moment, as you mentioned, we are conducting one of the largest surveys. So that will go out to both industry and couples. So we'll get some really interesting data from that, which we can.
I am going to do mine as well. I've got the email. I just haven't done it yet, but I promise I'll do it. I will, Darcy.
Good. We certainly want your feedback, Pete. But from a survey that we kind of did at the beginning of COVID, just to kind of see what was happening across the board, we did find that 30% of couples have had to reduce their initial wedding budget, just, you know, with job loss, reduced hours, that type of thing. We also found that 80% couples reported that they are hesitant to put down a deposit with a supplier. However, out of that 80, only 21% said that they definitely wouldn't put the deposit down. So I guess, you know, in the same way I've been approaching any kind of suppliers that I've reached out to in, say, the last 3 to 4 months, I've just asked some questions, you know, in the event that I need to postpone, what are your terms and conditions? Is my deposit interchangeable? Can I move it to a new date with, you know, flexibility around that as well? So I'm not kind of withholding deposits from anyone, but I am asking some of those questions just to make sure I know where we sit in the event that we cannot proceed. So I guess I'm sitting in that 80% as well. So it's totally fair to approach the situation with caution, but at the same time, we do need to support our industry as much as we can through this as well.
Yeah, it's definitely a tough one. And, you know, there's a lot of wisdom in that 80% going, we really want to, we just, like you said, just be cautious. And, you know, I've had couples who have, you know, recently booked, and even the last couple of weeks, just the question of what does happen to the deposit and that. And for me personally, it's been, you know, it's a non-refundable deposit. However, I haven't, with moving couples during COVID, if it's for other reasons, you know, if couples just decide, you know, oh, we just wanted to change our date, it doesn't really work that way, because obviously then you change a different date, that's a whole new day that could have been booked for another couple. But because of COVID, it's hopefully a once in a lifetime sort of experience. It's like, hey, let's try and make this as easy as possible and as stress-free as possible for our couples. Let's move that. And I'm not going to charge you extra for that date. And the booking, the deposit that you put down on this date, we'll just move it to that one. Now, every supplier is different, and they have to make their own decisions based on their own means, and some, you know, venues and that have staff, so it gets a lot trickier for those when you've got a larger business. Yes. But I definitely understand there is a lot of caution when talking to couples, and I think rightly so. And, you know, I think it's I think it's good to hear that 21% of couples, I guess that it's only 21% of couples feel like it's just too risky. And I get that. Everyone's got their own financial circumstances. A lot of people have lost their jobs, or maybe one of the partners has lost their jobs during this time. So they've had to reduce, as you said, that the initial wedding budget. But it's nice to hear that out of the 80%, only 21% are considering it too risky, because I think it shows that we're like, this isn't going to last forever. We are going to be allowed out, and particularly those in Victoria, we will be allowed out of our 5K radius one day. Actually, I think it's yesterday or today. That's nice. So yeah, what does 2021 look like for weddings? Because you shared with us there'll be an increase. What else will change? What are some big differences that we can expect going ahead? And I know this is all, we're sort of guessing here. So I know that no one's going to hold you accountable to this, whatever you say. But yeah, give us some thoughts. What does 2021 look like?
Yeah, definitely. I guess from our kind of industry knowledge and kind of just watching, I guess, how the other states, especially here in Victoria, are unfolding, it's kind of giving us an understanding of what weddings will look like moving forward. So obviously I touched on availability, so that's going to be the biggest thing. Anyone who's saying, it's all over, I want to get married in 2021, that's fantastic. We'd love to have you, but as long as you are flexible, if you come to us and say, I want a Saturday night in December, maybe wait 2.5 years. That's kind of the reality of the situation. So the more flexible you can be during this time, I guess everyone's had to be flexible. We've all had to learn how to adapt. So why not use these newfound skills to plan your wedding? Thursday's a great day. Everyone's keen for a drink. It's almost the end of the week. It's a little bit cheaper, so incentivize there. Friday night, great weddings. Everyone wakes up on Saturday morning, they've still got the rest of the weekend to recover. And I've always actually been a massive fan of Sundays. I guess kind of being a wedding planner, Sundays was always my only day off. So I used to make the most of them back in the day. Sunday sesh, as I like to say. So
Nice.
I've kind of always wanted to adopt that for my wedding. We were fortunate enough to have a Saturday night available, but I would have had absolutely no issue going for a Sunday. You can start a lot earlier in the day and finish earlier at night, so you can kind of make the most of the daylight. Maybe start for a 2:00 ceremony with pre-drinks and canapés starting from 4, with everything wrapping up by 10 or 10:30. The reality of the situation is as well, a lot of us have had to forego holidays this year and potentially may not have taken a lot of annual leave that we were potentially owed. So I don't think your guests are going to be too upset with you that they may have to take a half day or a day off here and there. I think they'll actually love the long weekend or the experience. And I think we're all going to really appreciate the finer things in life moving forward. So, don't be afraid to take up a new day, even a Monday, extra long weekend. You can have the Saturday and the Sunday with the girls or the boys getting prepped and pampered. So it's a great way to kind of not only save money, but also have your wedding exactly how you planned without having to wait that little bit extra longer, or a little bit longer, I should say. The other thing that we're obviously cautious of is there might be kind of limited in terms of mingling and dancing. So just kind of being creative and creative with how you're going to plan that out. So, whether or not you, rather than do all of your speeches in one lot, you have maybe the fathers do their speeches just before entree. After main, you can have a member of your bridal party, maybe they do some group speeches, and then finish with your speech after the main course before your first dance. So rather than lump them all into one, say 20-minute block, spread them out throughout the night. Another thing that we see quite often already in European style weddings is a first and a second entree. So it's always lovely to start with, say, a cold entree, maybe a beautiful steak tartare or a kingfish sashimi or something similar, something quite light and fresh, and then moving into your standard risotto or pasta. So if, canapes aren't an option in terms of a stand-up food style of service, why not consider a first and second entree? I think there might be a lot of adaptations to menus in terms of more of a degustation or a la carte, almost like a restaurant feel, rather than your stock standard 50-50 steak and chicken. So there's an opportunity here for our couples to kind of think outside the box. In terms of food service, you could look at a chef, a live cooking station which is operated by a chef. So obviously in terms of hygiene and sanitation there, you are covered. So they could do an amazing gnocchi station, a noodle station, dumpling bar. So something that's quite interactive for your guests, that they can actually watch the item be prepared and smell it as well. And I guess kind of entertainment with games. The shoe game will certainly make a appearance. It's a great kind of time filler, but also good fun. So for anyone who's not familiar, the shoe game is basically the bride and groom sit back to back, so they can't see each other. And basically the MC or whoever you determine to run the game asks questions. So maybe, who's the loudest? And if the bride agrees that she is the loudest partner, or she puts her hand up, and vice versa. So it's quite interesting to see how the couple see themselves from the other side, if that makes sense. So
I'm glad you clarified that game, because I was thinking the shoe game, is that like shoesies where you pour beer into a shoe? Is that what she's meaning? But no, your game is so much more wedding appropriate.
Like much more wedding appropriate. So it's kind of finding out a little bit more about the couple and how they see each other. But the other one that you could do to involve your guests a little bit more is kind of like a couples trivia. So I had a girlfriend of mine who had to postpone her wedding. So on the day of her wedding, we did a Zoom trivia. So they asked us questions all about the couple and, where did they meet? Where was their first date? Where did they get engaged? That type of thing. So it was actually quite detrimental to our friendship because I didn't actually win. So it was a bit risky, but another great time filler. But yeah, I guess it's an opportunity to think outside the box. Weddings don't need to be this traditional stock standard, here, there and everywhere. They can be anything and everything you want them to be. Yeah,
definitely. There are some great ideas in there as well with, and I'm sure we'll see plenty more things come out of this. Like you said, we've had to adapt, and people are going to get creative and going, well, if we can't have the dance floor, which is going to be shattering for so many people, but if we can't do that, what can we do? And Correct. It'll be interesting to see what happens. And I, as an MC, I hope that gets utilised a little bit more. Obviously, we do our thing, but there's normally a fair bit of space in between with eating and stuff. It will be nice to, see what comes out of that space.
Definitely.
How can couples compensate for all the differences when booking with COVID? So there's obviously a lot of things that are going to have to change. You've given us some ideas. Is there any other you can?
I guess for me, I think focus on your food and beverage. Obviously, I tapped into that just briefly in terms of your first and second entree stations and things like that. But make this more of an experience for your guests, whether it's rather than an arrival cocktail, being that we can't have the standard pre-drinks and canapes, or they may look slightly different. Think about having a late night cocktail that's, designed around you and your partner. You might have come up with a funny name for it, and it might be your favorite color, and that can be passed around on tray service just to kind of give you that elegant, classy feel. And you could have, a spirit section or something like that. So make it, I guess, focus on the food and beverage, and make it much more of an experience for your guests and something that they're going to walk away remembering. Because I guess my biggest thing that I've always said to couples at the end of the day is people are going to remember if they left your wedding and went to Macca's drive-through because they were hungry. They're not going to remember the colour of your flowers. They're not going to remember what type of chair they sat on, but they're definitely going to remember if they had fun and, whether they were well fed and well served.
100%. That's actually a really good point. People will not remember the chair that they sat on. They'll remember the napkins. They'll probably remember if things look nice and then if they match. But 100% with food. And well, I'm not really sure what it says about my wedding because we definitely went through Macca's on the way out. But that was pretty. It was pretty late, and we were.
I'm sure that's because you and your wife didn't have time to eat.
I didn't even have a piece of my cake. I'm still shattered to this day.
That's kind of my biggest gripe. I'm a food lover. I'm a massive foodie. So I've always said to my couples, please, you're spending an absolute fortune on this day. You've gone through the menu tasting. You know how good this food is. So don't miss out. So I'm that wedding planner that is, everywhere you turn around, I'm there. And I'm saying, go and eat your entree now. And, if they're talking to someone, I'm that one that's, super polite with a smile and just say, oh, she hasn't actually had her entree yet. Do you mind if she just heads back to her table? And they're like, oh, I'm so sorry. But, I'm a massive advocate for eating your own meal. Like, trust me, on my wedding night, when my steak is served, I do not want to be spoken to.
That's great. I'm 100%. When I MC the couples, always on there to make sure everything flow. But my other biggest role is making sure, and I check in with them regularly. I'm like, hey, how are you doing? I'm like, have you had something to eat? Have you had something to drink? Can I get you something? Because sometimes they're walking around from table to table, and like I said, they haven't had an entree. While everyone's just wants to have a good old yarn, and which is fantastic. But if you've been up since early in the morning getting makeup and hanging out with the boys, and you just need to eat. You need to look after yourself on the wedding day as well.
Definitely. And something that's really helpful to ask your venue of choice. Most of your hotels and kind of large wedding venues will actually employ what we call a bridal attendant or a bridal staff member. So basically their job for the night is just to look after, say, the bridal table, potentially sometimes the parents' table as well, depending on the size of the wedding. But their sole responsibility is to make sure that you're well fed and well hydrated. So, if you need a glass of water, they should be there kind of in the immediate vicinity of you. So that's always something nice to ask your venue. And I'm sure if that was something that maybe they don't do, they certainly would be open to. So ask the question.
I just want to touch on the point as well that you mentioned earlier in terms of when we're looking at the differences and how can we compensate for 2021. And well, look, let's hope 2022 things are pretty back by normal, but we have no idea. Looking for different days, and particularly as where the predictions are coming back that weddings are going to increase. Was it 15% next year?
20%.
20%, and then another 5% in 2020.
Yes, 25%, correct, in 2022.
And so with that, obviously, currently the holy grail for dates and days is a Saturday and a Saturday afternoon. And I'm a big advocate for going, well, look for the other days. Thursdays has become, for being in the wedding industry, it's becoming a norm to expect a Thursday. Whereas before it's like a Thursday, but now it's pretty much a norm. Then you've got your Friday and your Sundays, and I really like that you made that point, and Anthea made this point from the Farm Yarra Valley, is feel free to start a little earlier, because if you start at 2, ceremony at 2, people, you finish by that sort of 10:30. You don't need to push out the time. It's like finishing at 12 isn't the telltale sign for a great wedding. Rather, the great sign for a wedding is everyone had an incredible time, and you're not standing there from 10:30 saying goodbye to all the people who are having to say, oh, we're sorry, we've got to go, we've got kids, and all this sort of stuff. You can have an incredible day by starting earlier and still get the wedding you want, possibly at an even better price, just by having it on a different day.
And I guess the other thing that I wanted to touch on as well is winter weddings. We have some really gorgeous here in Melbourne. Obviously, I know I'm speaking very solely on Victoria at the moment, but obviously Victoria's my baby in terms of the wedding industry. But we have some absolutely gorgeous properties that are obviously indoors. We don't have too many outdoor venues here in Melbourne because at the end of the day, even if you get married in February or March, there's still a chance it's going to rain. So people are constantly afraid of these winter weddings. We did see them kind of pick up in the last probably 2 to 3 years, just because I guess the European honeymoon is becoming the new norm. So if you do have a June wedding, then you can head off straight away onto your beautiful European honeymoon. But make use of these indoor venues. My ceremony location is the Dome on Collins Street, an absolutely gorgeous office building that actually used to be a bank. So very kind of iconic here in Melbourne. But it's all indoor. I'll then be travelling by car to our reception at the State Library of Victoria. So obviously it would be devastating if it is raining on the day, obviously touch wood, but at the end of the day, I've made kind of concessions for that regardless. So same for a winter wedding. You can have some really beautiful days in June, July, August. I've always found that the last 2 weekends of August are very big for weddings. You get those really lovely kind of 18 and sunny here in Melbourne. So don't be afraid, choose a venue that's got a gorgeous fireplace. Go for your deep reds, your burgundies, Go for a really indulgent meal, a beautiful steak with a red wine jus, a beautiful pasta entree, and kind of make the most of it. Finish with a hot dessert, which no one seems to do, a beautiful sticky date or something like that. You could have mulled wine. You could make it that beautiful winter wonderland experience that everyone seems to be afraid of.
Oh, Darcy, you're talking my language, particularly that sticky date pudding. I feel like we could keep talking all day, I think, even just be going month by month, and you can take us through, or maybe the seasons, color schemes and food and just, anyway, we'll have to do this again, obviously. Now, one thing I love to find out for couples is, because a lot of couples are organising their wedding for the first time, what do you wish couples would know? And you can talk from perspective of Easy Weddings, also draw upon your background from being in venues and that. What do you wish couples knew?
I guess my biggest kind of tip has always been, don't sweat the small stuff. And kind of what comes along with that is trusting your bridal dream team of suppliers. So at the end of the day, we've all done this many, many times before. We spend our weekends devoted to weddings, and you're making sure that your day is executed as per your vision. So trust in us that we will do everything in our power to make it the most amazing day for you as possible. And that's kind of why you have engaged our services. The little things happen, and we'll always come up with a plan A, B, C, D, E, F, G. More often than not, I've had couples come to me at the end and say, oh my God, that was amazing. I had absolutely no idea that you'd even changed that. I said, at the end of the day, if I had asked you that at the start of the night, it would have been something that you might have potentially had a bit of a sticking point for you. But at the end of the day, it wasn't really a big deal. So don't sweat the small stuff. Most of your wedding coordinators at a venue, or even a wedding planner, if you do hire one, they're always going to understand what your must-haves are and what the most important things to you are. So they're certainly not going to sacrifice on anything that's detrimental to your big day.
We just did a podcast with Mark Cam, getting the French perspective on dating and weddings and all that. And one of the things he said, like, for his day, I said, like, what do you remember? And he was saying that he was pretty nervous on the day, and his head's running through all these scenarios, the things that could go wrong. And then he realized it's all good. They know what they're doing. And he just realized, the team, he got Andrew Redmond as his celebrant, and he was like, people knew what they were doing, and he was able just to relax and just trust in them.
No, very, very safe hands with Andrew there. And pretty much at the end of the day, all of your suppliers across Australia, especially if they're listed on our site, they're excellent at what they do. So trust in them, and trust that they will, put you first. It is your day at the end of the day.
Yeah, 100%. And let's finish on, if there's one other, I guess, the best advice that you could give, one recommendation for couples, what would it be?
I think there's a lot of discussion at the moment around photographers, because obviously they do come at a price point, but at the end of the day, it's an amazing service, and they spend hours upon hours editing your photos and printing albums and things like that. So there is certainly a price that comes with that. It's usually the second biggest ticket item after the venue. So what I always say to the couple is, of course, you're left with your memories, but at the end of the day, what you're left with physically is the photos. So don't scrimp on something that's so important to you that you can look at for years and years to come. Obviously, you can still get an absolutely amazing, great quality photographer in, say, a mid-range price point. But I constantly see these Facebook posts about, is there a student photographer who's potentially affordable or a little bit of a cheaper option? At the end of the day, is that something that you're willing to sacrifice, knowing that, I've had very minimal, but I have had couples in the past that have kind of regretted the photographer choice, or potentially not going that extra mile in terms of the hours in the photography packet as well. They might think, 6 hours is definitely enough. But if you want photos of you half ready in your robe with your girlfriends, and then you want photos going to the ceremony, at the ceremony, photos, reception, father-daughter dance, bridal dance, speeches, dance floor, that's way more than 6 hours is going to account for. So I've had a lot of couples kind of regret that their photographer may have left at 8 p.m. or whatever time they've essentially paid for. So I think that that's something that deserves a little bit more thought, I guess is probably the right word.
Yeah. And I will share my experience. We had a friend do our photos, and they did a great job. If we had employed someone who did it professionally, we would probably still have access to our wedding photos, as we've lost the disc we have. Their hard drive was damaged, and we've basically got one booklet of wedding photos, and that's all we've got left. So, and when these days, if you go to a professional photographer, you'll have the link to your photos, and as far as I know, they'll be there for forever, if not for years. So yes, don't do what Pete and Grace did. Do what Darcy's recommending, and spend a little bit more and have those memories forever, because you put so much into the day. You might as well truly remember it and be able to have all those great memories at your fingertips whenever you want.
Definitely. And, something to show the grandkids and something to treasure for years to come. You can look at it every anniversary. You can get some gorgeous prints these days that you can use kind of as styling in your home. That's kind of my dream, to have a gorgeous wedding photo as you enter into our home. So if the quality of the image isn't that great, you're not going to want to blow it up and have it on presentation in your harem, are you?
No.
So I think that's just, I guess, at the end of the day, we do need to save on costs. So there are a lot of couples struggling financially just with everything that's going on. But that doesn't necessarily mean that that's the item that you need to potentially, strip back on. There are other ways. A wedding cake is so traditional, but do you really need a wedding cake? Do you have your gorgeous dessert? You have roaming desserts, or whatever the venue has included in your package. Could you potentially have just a fake cake if you just, you really want the photos and that kind of traditional feel? You could do a cheese wheel that you can pick up from your local deli. There are some ways that you can certainly have everything that you wanted at a cheaper price, but I would probably just recommend, from my personal experience, that photographer is not something that you want to scrimp on.
Darcy, thank you so much for joining us. Darcy, how can people find out more about Easy Weddings, and how can they get in touch?
Sure. Thanks for having me today, Pete. It was great fun chatting with you. Obviously, we've got our amazing website, which is a great hub directory site for everything and everything across Australia-wide in our wonderful industry. But you also have our venue finding service and our supplier packages that I mentioned earlier. We have our fantastic app, so highly recommend downloading it. It is free. And then in addition to that, we have obviously our Facebook and our Instagram pages. So we'd love for you to follow us on social media. You will soon start to see a little bit more engagement from us from a personal level as well. So we're going to be doing lots of takeovers and Q&A sessions just to kind of find out what you really like to see from us and how we can help you further. And of course, as you can imagine, there's going to be some wedding diaries from me as well, so you can follow along with my wedding planning journey as well.
It's fantastic. So much information people can get. The app, you've got over 80% of Australian suppliers on there at your fingertips. You've got a budget guide in there and all that. So fantastic. And of course, we can follow your journey with you planning your wedding as well, which is great.
Yes, definitely.
Fantastic.
Well, thanks again for having me, Pete.
Thank you, Darcy. And thank you for joining us, everyone. Have an incredible day, evening, wherever you are. Thank you for joining us. Bye.
Like we do it.